Welcome back to part 2 with Lauren Hughes of Lighted Way Home Inspections in Hillsboro, Texas. In the last episode, we talked about how she shows up in real-world, local ways to build connection and trust. Today, we're flipping the lens and talking about how she brings that same authenticity online. Lauren's using AI, social media, and intentional content to grow her brand without sounding robotic or salesy. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back. In the last episode, Lauren showed us how Lighted Way Home Inspections has grown by showing up for their people offline with generosity, consistency, and care. Now we're going to flip the lens and talk about how she carries that same energy online through social media, smart use of AI tools, and brand building that feels real. So let's jump in.
Thanks, Carla. I'm excited to talk about this. This is my jam.
Yeah. Well, so let's start with, if you don't mind, let's start with your social strategy. So what types of posts or content tend to get the best response for you? And how do you decide or figure out what to post? So whether it's educational, just personality or behind the scenes.
Yeah, so we pretty much started out on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook more so because I think people in our smaller towns just tend to still be living on Facebook. But Instagram, I feel like has helped us like keep up with kind of growth and people moving from the bigger cities and that kind of thing. So if you look back, I'm not an expert on social media at by any means, but so if you look back at the beginnings, I was playing with Canva and learning how to just make little posts to talk about our services and things like that. But it has progressed. I just kind of started using our business social media similarly to my personal, sharing my day, sharing, my goal is to help people get to know Clay because he's the face of our business. He's the one out, doing the serving and meeting the clients most of the time. So lots of reels. And we had to really come out of our comfort zone for that. Nobody shows up on social media full of confidence. If they
Right,
do,
right.
if they do, then they're awesome. We were scared,
Well,
but
no,
we
it's putting yourself out there, and it's a little different too when it's your company because you want to like be perfect and
yeah,
you're like, I don't know, this hit or miss, but let's just cross our fingers.
yeah. So I am a perfectionist for sure, and I think I realized early on
Same.
that it just wasn't going to be perfect. So maybe I'm just going to share my vulnerability, and really show like the background of what we're doing and him walking in the door and how was his day and I'm in stories posting, that I'm making his lunch because he's got to run to the next inspection or whatever the case may be. So we do a lot of reels, but we also mix in quite a bit of content to just, solidify like that we know what we're talking about and we're not just dancing around and, doing silly reels. So it's kind of a mix. But I will say that the reels and the posts that get the most engagement are the ones where we're just being ourselves and being
Hmm.
authentic and, talking about, the weekend and what we're doing with the kids and so it really just shows that people they want to see the real you.
People.
Yeah, they want to connect with you on a deeper level. And so I think it was Sarah Wilson with Wilson and Sons like 3 or 4 years ago. I was listening to a podcast, Spectora podcast, and she said nobody wants to see your toilet pictures. And and it was, I mean, it's so true, right?
Hmm.
I always hear her voice in the background. Clay will send me, look at this issue I found with the septic on this house, and I'm like, I'm not sharing that. That's gross. You know, like you got to think about your audience, right? And if I don't want to see that, maybe they don't either. So there's some like kind of basics to that.
Well, and so there's so something, having worked with uh, writing and producing a lot of social media content and blogs and stuff for inspectors, one thing that I have to constantly reiterate is that people want the content that makes them feel good and that's going to help them.
Yes.
So, just because you're a home inspector doesn't mean that you need to post everything about ventilation, right? Because no one is going to be riveted by your ventilation journey um, at
Yeah.
all, right? So, yes, it's important. Are sewer scope inspections important? Sure. Is radon dangerous? Absolutely. And it's, so save that for, National Radon Month in January and just offer a promo for $50 off a radon test with every home inspection, right? Or
Hmm.
write something educational about it there. But what they really want is the stuff that's going to make them laugh, make them feel good, make them know that you're a person, or something that's going to help them.
Yes.
So the content that I encourage inspectors to create is that stuff, right? Like, you want to be trusted. They don't want to be bored by you, though, right? And they don't want to scroll past you and be like, oh my God, if I have to see one more, water heater or weird plumbing situation. And, there are a lot of inspectors that are doing it right, where they're just like, holy cow, oh my God, look at this. And they make it like a funny thing in a short little clip. Like, this is insane. Never seen this before. But the content that has typically been most successful is uh, people being humans, right, on social media and offering up information that is helpful, right, and or helpful and or real. And that has been my experience. And what I'm hearing is that that's been also your experience, unless I'm.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I'm kind of sharing things from like a female, wife, mother. The kids homeschooling. I'm kind of sharing all kinds of stuff like that, which is just it's just who we are. So we're gonna share that. But we have friends in the industry. Um, I'm thinking like Abby and Brian in Seattle, they have Home Trooper. They're sharing
Mhm.
like beautiful shots of the ocean and, all these gorgeous Seattle, things. And I love it. Like, I'm interested in this. I'm looking forward to like seeing that you've refreshed your stories. Like, what are y'all doing over there?
Right,
Um,
right,
so it doesn't have to be like, I guess, it's different for everyone. Like for us, it's very personal. We've talked, at length about authenticity and how much that means for us. But some people are more private and they still have something to share, something to offer. We've got a friend in Alabama, Derek Gooden. He is sharing a lot. And his stories about like going to the gym and like other business professionals that are in his community and he's shouting them out. And so then he's also sharing, his content and what he's doing out in the field inspecting and things like that. But he's not necessarily like, being super personal about his home life or whatever. So it's just different for different people, right? But it works. Like I'm interested.
right,
Like what is he doing? Oh, what's going on over there? So, I think like, okay, what, myself and what they're doing, it's valuable. It's interesting, and it's working. I think they're two that I thought of immediately that I actually just was connecting more with them at the last IEB conference and so they came to mind immediately. So yeah, I mean different strokes, right? For everyone.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think that, increasingly, social media initially was intended to be, social media,
yeah.
and it has turned into, I don't even know if it's really an accurate description for it anymore, but I have found the people who have been the most successful they stopped overthinking it, right? And they just, and I said, I've told people, just start small, start small by congratulating someone who closed on a house you inspected, right?
Yes.
Or by thanking a realtor, right? Resharing, follow some realtors and reshare their posts.
Hmm.
And just start small like that, and you'll start seeing what other people, and pay attention to what other people are doing, right? And then you'll
Yes.
see, don't overcomplicate it. Just get on there and, you're on a roof and maybe you see a really cool, pollinator garden and
Hmm.
you take a picture of that and you're like, look at this. This new owner's going to be really lucky. These are some gorgeous flowers or something, right? Because that is what people want. And I think some people get so crippled by what they're supposed to do that they just don't do anything.
Yeah.
And so just start following other people that are doing this and see what they're doing, and just don't overthink it that much. So that kind of is a nice segue into, how you could use AI as a tool for like brainstorming, if you are stuck and you don't know where to start, right? And I know that you've been using AI, particularly, I think, ChatGPT,
Hmm.
for help with brainstorming and even doing some data analysis. So, if you could tell me some more about that, what kinds of things do you use it for most? And then, if there are any go to prompts or wins where it has saved you time or maybe sparked some additional creativity from you.
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned before that we're really in a place of scaling right now. We're trying to be like very aware of growth and what it'll look like and when we may need to hire or whatever that'll look like, and just be prepared for it. But one thing that AI has allowed us to do, especially now that we've really honed in on it, probably in the last year. At first, we were kind of just playing with it. I was using it for social media. But I think, now that we've really honed in on what it can do for us, it has really allowed us to scale and save so much time. So initially, when I started using ChatGPT, I was just kind of using it for creating content on social media, basically like description boxes. If Clay sent me a picture of, water coming into a house one way or another, then I might go to ChatGPT and say, give me a quick Instagram description about water intrusion on, a home inspection. And it'll ding, 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 and I might tell it even further, make it shorter and, more precise, and use some emojis. And, this is for Instagram. And I'll go, okay, here, what about this? And then so I would tweak it, or, remove this or whatever. And so what I've done with that is I've gone in and I've created like just really short, good pieces of information on services and various topics. And I've just copy and pasted all of that into my Google Keep. So when Clay sends me pictures or I have new content that I'm just throwing on real quick, I can just copy and paste those details. Like I might put a little personal caption like, oh, we're over here today and this is what we found. But then it'll dive deeper with some of that info that I've already saved. So that saves me a ton of time when it comes to like putting content out there just on the fly. And then also creating content to schedule. I use quite a bit of my saved little data pieces to just, throw them in. Now, Clay uses it quite a bit for report writing. It helps him kind of clarify if he sees something new or if he wants to reference code. We actually have just the entry level now. We've subscribed to ChatGPT where you pay, I don't know what it is, like $20 a month or whatever.
$20.
So he's got various GPTs. One is specific to reports, and he's fed it all of our code and the usual, stuff that he's working with. And so that way he can reference those things without flipping through or, going online and looking up specific codes. It's all there. And he can kind of copy and paste and edit and use it to streamline his report writing. So that saved him a ton of time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, use it quite regularly to analyze the market and kind of check in on our competitors. So I,
Competitor analysis, I
yes,
think, is a missed opportunity that a lot of inspectors don't know about. Some people are still a little wary about using it in report writing. And I've heard great examples of how people are doing it, including my last guest on the podcast, Chris Skinner. However, like as a business owner, the competitive analysis, tell me a little bit about that, how you're using it for that, and are you finding that valuable?
Yeah, so I initially set up a GPT that I wanted to know who I was. So I said, I want you to go to my website, lightawayhomeinspections.com, read about our company. I want you to go look at our social media. Oh, okay, what are your social media handles? And you feed it all of this. And then, you basically will say, okay, now based on everything you've learned about my business, and maybe I'll type in some extra details. I service this area, and this area. Compare me to my competition. And I mean, in 10 seconds, it's like, this person is a veteran. This person does this. You do this really well. Your Google reviews say this. Their Google reviews say that. And it will just give you everything you ever wanted to know about the people that are working in your service areas.
Right.
So
And having that knowledge, I mean, it's it might not be that all of it is actionable, but knowing what you know about it, right?
sure.
And the fact that if before AI, if you were just having to Google each company yourself and dig for this information, I mean, it could take a long time to do it, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is such a cool use of it. I've heard it described a few times now, and I consider how I use AI as like a research assistant for me or a
Mhm.
little admin assistant, right?
Mhm.
And I still am gonna look at the results, right? I'm not going to just blindly trust everything. And it's like, well, that's interesting. And then I might dig deeper or
Yes.
tell me your source, right? Or where did this come from so I can look further into it. But it's huge how much time it can save just off the bat by with stuff like this that can help give you the knowledge that you need to understand who your competitors are, but also opportunities because of that you could take with your own company.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you could ask it, are there any services that they're providing that I'm not? Or, there's just so many ways that you can take it. If you have a question about what's going on around you and you just don't have the time, like you said, we used to do that. Google everybody, read about them, go to
Uh-huh.
their Facebook, so this is just, it's just so quick. I added a blog recently to the website so
Mm-hmm.
we could just, keep up with SEO. I feel like we have
Mm-hmm.
a good hold on SEO. We get a lot of good calls from Google, from people Googling us, which is great, but I'm always looking for ways to improve. So, one thing that I created another GPT and said, okay, this is who I am. And I just started telling it about me, Lauren, the mom, the inspector's wife, this and that. And so it could kind of feel like my voice. And just kind of add those little extras. And then so I might go into it, for instance, one of our last blogs was around July 4th. So I was like, oh, people are going to be on the decks grilling. Maybe we'll talk about deck
Mm-hmm.
safety. So I go into it and I say, hey, I want to make a blog post about deck safety. I want to pull from, Internachi and reputable sources, tips and tricks on how to, check out your, deck and this and that, and give me some good statistics on, decks and, this and that. And so it just pulls it right up for me, and then
Uh-huh.
and, and again, this is a tool, right? So
Right.
it's not, I'm not just going to copy and paste that over because then you completely lose your voice. You lose that,
Exactly. But it gives
yeah.
you the bones of it.
Yes. Helps me
Yes.
organize my thoughts, and then I can tell it, yeah, I like that idea, I like this idea, I'm gonna take this out, and it's basically just like a way that you can, get everything, really organized and get all the details there that you want to hit, and then, start adjusting from there. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Well, I think that's, I mean, that is awesome, and those are such great examples of how you're using AI, like in the business, but also to help with social media. So you've said something that I really loved, that you want the brand of your company to be recognized, not just Clay's name or not just your name, Lauren. So I'm curious if you can tell me why that long-term brand trust is so important to you, and how are you building that identity as your company continues to grow?
Sure, yeah. I can't really put my finger on where it came from. I guess it just made sense to us that, we have a logo, and if we're sponsoring this or that, there's our logo on the banner, kind of a thing. And we thought, we don't know what our business will grow into, but if we've always treated it from the beginning like it was going to be, a huge company,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're dreamers, but that's just how we always approached it. So when it came to, the truck and the wrap and the tools, and we just wanted to give the very best from the get-go. So I think, in keeping that mindset and thinking about growth and what the future would look like, we recognized pretty early that we didn't want it to just be clay. Everybody, obviously they love Clay. He gives amazing reviews. He connects with the clients, the agents. He's just a really likable guy. But we definitely celebrate when folks go to the Google reviews and say, they did a great job, lighted way home inspections. I would highly recommend this company. And that kind of helps us know that we're on the right track. When he answers his phone, he's answering lighted way home inspection. This is Clay, and so he's always putting the name out there and
Mm-hmm.
keeping it from being, personal, even though I'm talking all about, being authentic and being personal. But
Well, no, but focusing on the strength of your brand is
mhm,
what will make you scalable long term, right? Because as you add inspectors, you want it to be interchangeable. Whoever is representing your brand is trusted because the brand is trusted, right?
yeah,
And so, and that's why I think that's so smart. I worked for a company once who they started off building websites and then they started adding stuff to it. And they unfortunately branded as insert name website. So then when they started expanding their services, they became insert name websites and more. And it's
mhm.
like, that is the kind of, I don't recommend it. So, I've learned a lot working for different companies who maybe made some different brand choices that they couldn't undo once they had done it, right? Or
Well,
they
that is
had made a certain person the face of the brand, but then when that person leaves, then you're left with like, well, this person, was this brand. So now what do we do? So I think that that again is such a smart business move that you've made, is putting the focus on the brand and you guys supporting that and building that up, and having anyone representing or working for your company is, it's transferable to them, right? Because the brand is supporting itself.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, that, especially when you make that first hire, is, making sure that, you don't have, of course, you're going to have agents and clients who are like, no, I want you, you're the one. But just being like you said, having the brand trust is everything. And, my other thought on that too is, if we had thought more about it at the beginning, we've really branched into commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And and he really likes commercial inspections, and so I see that growing, and we have some ideas on how to scale that and kind of take that in another direction too. But one thing I would say, we're not perfect, and when we look back at like selecting our name, we might have gone with something more like property inspections instead of home inspections, had we
I
known that we were
I
going
don't
to get
know.
people.
From an SEO perspective, though, when people are they're searching for a home inspector, they're not searching for a property inspector.
Well, that's true.
So, so as far as your company name goes, a lot of people do, home inspectors are needed more than commercial property inspectors for the most part, or are searched more on Google, right? So we can talk outside of this about tricks for that, but just quick
No, but
tip.
I'm glad you're bringing that up because I
Yeah,
think, we have some people watching who are getting started. Like I was over here thinking, maybe we made a mistake on that, but now you're making me
no.
think that
But
it was something.
what I do recommend you doing is having a dedicated landing page for commercial inspections, and you can start building that out.
Yeah, we
Another
do.
thing that you could consider is securing lighted way commercial inspections, a URL with the commercial inspections and have that redirect to your homepage. So we can
Oh,
talk about this, and this is getting a little off track, and
I love
I'm supposed to keep things online. um,
it. I'm
so
down.
okay, so you know how to get in touch with me, Lauren.
Yes.
Um, all right, so we probably need to wrap this up. So I would like to kind of last question ask what you would say to inspectors who are feeling stuck or overwhelmed when it comes to social media. And do you have any advice for small steps they can take to start showing up more consistently and authentically?
Sure. I'd say just start. Don't let the fear or the unknown paralyze you, because we didn't have a great grasp on it to begin with, and it's like anything else. You just rip the band-aid off and just go. Don't be afraid to. I think really putting yourself out there and the fear behind it. That is what makes it authentic. That's what makes it likable. And know who you are, and your people will find you. I remember a couple years ago talking to Kevin, and he was like, "You guys are gonna find your people," because we had just taken off full time. We were really like on the cusp of this bigger business, and he said, "I have no doubt that y'all are gonna find your people," and he was right. We
Right.
have we've really been able to make those connections. So just rest in that, and realize that all of us who are building businesses that are gaining success, we all started. I was watching this podcast and taking notes and trying to learn how go from a nursing to home inspector wife and getting into
Just a
this
bit of a
industry.
leap.
Yeah. So, we've all been there, and there is no magic, wand. We all just put in the time, the effort, and the discomfort, especially when it comes to social media. So, small steps, going and just making little posts, take a picture and describe it. If you're not ready for reels, if you're not ready for video, you're already at the inspection. You see interesting, curious, weird things, a dog, a cat, the parrot in the cage, whatever. Just snap a picture. It's all
Start
about
somewhere.
following up. Yeah, start somewhere. I was just talking to an agent who is really grown a following, and I was like, man, I feel like you've really, something has shifted in the last 6 months. And she said, I just started showing up every day. Consistency is key. So I
Hmm.
think that's definitely the takeaway.
Right, right. Awesome. All right. So, how good was that? Lauren's one of those people who reminds you that marketing doesn't have to be weird or complicated. It just has to feel like you. So, whether you're using ChatGPT or just snapping a photo at your next walkthrough, you can still stay visible and stay real. So, if this episode gave you a nudge, pass it along to someone else who could use it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, leave us a quick review, and we'll keep bringing you more of this kind of good stuff. Again, big thanks, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you so much.
for your second visit on the podcast, and hopefully not your last.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Whether it's a blog post sparked by ChatGPT or a story walk promo on Instagram, Lauren proves you can show up digitally without losing your voice. If you're looking to grow your presence without selling out, this is your permission slip. Be real, be useful, be consistent. Let your values lead, and the growth will follow. If this episode hit home, give us a follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with an inspector, agent, or small business owner who's ready to grow their local presence.